All right, I want you to look at the latest AAA glance at average gasoline prices. A week ago, just as Harvey was hitting $2.40 a gallon, now $2.66 a gallon. A lot of futures and related activity, which could herald what's coming down the pike. They have been higher as well, although coming off their highs. But if my next guest is right, what Harvey started, Irma could continue for a while. It's a Schork Report editor, Stephen Schork, on what's going on. Stephen, you seem to think that Irma is going to play a role in keeping gas prices pretty high, right? Or higher?
Well, at this point, as with everything, the hurricane has changed its path, Neil. So as of last night, it still looked like there was a good chance that the hurricane was going to cross over the Keys and enter the Gulf, which if that had occurred, and it still can occur, right. But according to that forecast, yeah, entering the Gulf, and then, of course, with its sights on the epicenter of refining capacity, that certainly could have kept gasoline prices higher. But the latest tracks now this morning has the hurricane, as we know, tailing into Florida and potentially going up the east coast of Florida and the Atlantic coast of the United States, far, far away from the Gulf Coast refinery epicenter. So at this point now, what I'm about to say is no consolation to the people of Florida and to the people of the Caribbean right now that have just experienced Irma. But from an oil and gas standpoint, right now, this is good news as far as prices are concerned. The further we get away from the epicenter right now is already starting to rebuild. It was just a week ago that Harvey made landfall, and we're already starting to see activity pick up, and hence we are starting to see now the correction after a spike, starting to see the correction in gasoline prices.
So as long as this thing clears, whatever severe damage it could do to the coast, if it gets close to the southeastern coast or even up the eastern seaboard, as long as it stays well enough away from those Gulf refineries, the impact ceases to be what it was, for example, for Harvey, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And what we're going to see now is we're going to see, and you had pictures of it before, of people queuing up at gasoline stations in Florida. And if that storm does, so we're going to get a lot of short-term demand spike over the next 2 weeks. We're moving a lot of demand forward at this point. But to the point that as long as we don't see any sort of disruption to the pipeline activity, refinery capacity activity, and the rebuilds, and let's keep in mind, we're past Labor Day, we're past the peak holiday season. So at this point, demand's going to start to fall. Supply will start to work its way back into the market, and hence I would expect to see prices continue to pull back as we head in towards the bottom of the market, which we typically see right before the holidays. That is to say, late October, early November.
What about wildcard developments? And I know I'm just throwing out possibilities, or black swan developments, North Korea and getting more agitated with us and we with them. You would normally think that would have a quick impact on gas futures or prices, but the scare effect could cause a knee-jerk pop. Do you see that happening?
There's a tertiary impact on that, Neil, that any sort of scare coming out of geopolitical event, coming out of North Korea, of course, a country that does not have a lot of oil, so is not a big player in the oil market, but it will impact the price of gold. It will impact the price of the dollar. And there is an inverse relationship with the value of the dollar and the value of oil or any consumption commodity for that matter, given that the U.S. dollar is still generally the world's invoicing currency. So if you start to see any sort of flight to safety, as it were, any sort of impact on the dollar, depending on which way the dollar goes, you would expect to see oil prices move in the opposite direction. So indeed, it's not a direct one-to-one correlation, but there is a very strong long-term historical relationship between the dollar, of course, and commodity prices. So as goes the dollar relative to North Korea, so shall go oil prices, albeit in the opposite direction.
Stephen Schork, thank you for that reminder. We're just trying to step back, guys, and to Stephen's point, just get a look at the entire big picture. Of course, first and foremost, you're focused on people's safety. Secondly, then, being a business network, we look at how this plays out, and it is predictably going to script here. News first hits of the storm on the way. Refineries and operations hit or feared that they could be hit, shut down. There's the commensurate run up. This avoiding the area, a bit of a run down. And of course, you see a run up in related stocks of those companies that do BAFO business when people are scrambling at a Home Depot or a Walmart or a Lowe's to catch up on stuff. just as property casualty insurers trend down on the belief that they're going to have a lot of bills to pay. A lot more after this.
Monaco Rare Coins has